My father stood at the head of the private dining table, lifted his wineglass toward my brother, and said, "To Mike, my only real child." For a moment, the whole room seemed to forget how to breathe. My 34th birthday cake sat in front of me with one candle still burning, its small flame shaking in the air from the open door behind the waiter. 23 people were gathered around the table: relatives, family friends, Mike's in-laws, and a few neighbors my parents had invited because my father liked an audience when he felt important. They had all heard him. No one could pretend they had not. My mother lowered her eyes to her plate. My aunt pressed her napkin to her mouth. One of the servers paused beside the wall with a pitcher of water in her hand, pretending to study the glasses. Mike leaned back in his chair with a lazy smile, the kind he always wore when my father praised him for existing. I looked at the cake, then at my father. He did not correct himself. Instead, he laughed softly and raised the glass higher, as if the cruelty had been charming. "You all know what I mean. Mike is the son who carries the family name. He's the one who keeps this family standing." A few people gave nervous little laughs because silence would have forced them to admit what he had done. My cousin Hannah looked at me across the table with wide eyes, silently begging me not to react. In my family, peace had always meant I swallowed the insult before anyone else had to feel uncomfortable. I had paid for that dinner. I had reserved the private room, covered the deposit, chosen the cake my mother said would look elegant in photos, and transferred money that morning into the account my father used for family needs. That same account had paid Mike's rent when his landlord threatened eviction, Angela's car insurance when she claimed her card had been hacked, my parents' medical premiums, their property taxes, my mother's prescriptions, and my father's club dues, which he insisted were important for connections. And now, at the table I had funded, under lights I had paid for, my father was calling Mike his only real child. Mike's wife, Angela, touched his arm and smiled at me with polished pity. "Emily, don't look like that. Your father is just being sentimental." My father turned toward me, his expression tightening the moment he saw my face. "There it is," he said, "that sensitive look. I'm making a toast, Emily. Don't twist it into one of your emotional performances." My mother finally moved, but only to smooth the edge of the tablecloth in front of her. "Your father didn't mean it that way." That sentence had followed me since childhood. He did not mean it when he missed my graduation dinner because Mike had a casual baseball practice. He did not mean it when he gave Mike the larger bedroom after I had already painted it myself. He did not mean it when he told relatives I was useful with numbers but not naturally lovable. He never meant any of it. Yet somehow I was always the one expected to recover quietly. I placed my napkin beside my plate and looked around the table. The candle was still burning. The waiter was still trapped near the door. Everyone was watching me now. Not with concern, but with that familiar family warning that said, "Do not embarrass us by reacting to what we did." Mike reached for the cake knife. "Come on, Em. Don't ruin your own birthday. Let's cut the cake." My own birthday. I almost smiled at that. "No," I said gently. His hand stopped above the knife. "No? Not yet." My father's mouth tightened. "Emily, don't start." "I'm not starting anything," I said, reaching into my handbag. "I'm ending something." Angela gave a small laugh and looked around the table for support. "Is this about money again? Because honestly, Emily, helping family doesn't make you a victim. Some women would be grateful they were still included." I took out my phone and placed it beside my plate, screen facing down. The simple movement changed the air more than shouting would have. My father's eyes dropped to it immediately, and for the first time that night, his confidence slipped. Mike noticed. "What's going on?" I looked at my brother, at the expensive watch on his wrist, at the shirt Angela had once asked me to temporarily help with. Because Mike had an interview that never happened. He had spent years accepting comfort without asking who created it. Maybe that was the cleanest form of entitlement, never needing to know the source of the water as long as the glass stayed full. "You heard Dad," I said. "You're the one who keeps this family standing." Mike frowned. "So? So, starting tonight, you can stand." The table fell silent again, but this silence was different. The first one had been embarrassment. This one was fear trying to understand where to land. My father lowered his glass slowly. Put the phone away. I unlocked it with my thumb. On the screen was the family account dashboard, the one my father had asked me to set up 7 years earlier after his surgery. Back then, he said he only needed help for a few months. A few months became utilities, insurance, taxes, emergency loans, school payments, repairs, groceries, late fees, and quiet transfers no one thanked me for, because gratitude would have required honesty. I turned the screen toward him just enough for him to recognize it. His face changed. Mike leaned forward. What account is that? Angela's smile faded. Richard? My father did not answer them. He only stared at me, his hand still wrapped around the stem of his wine glass. Emily, he said much lower now. This is not the place. I looked at the faces around the table, the people who had watched him erase me and expected me to protect the evening for them. Then I looked back at my father. You made it the place, I said. At midnight, the family account closes. My father stared at my phone as if the glowing screen had exposed something indecent. A minute earlier, he had been tall and comfortable at the head of the table, raising his glass over my birthday cake and calling Mike his only real child. Now his shoulders had tightened, and his eyes kept moving from the family account dashboard to the faces around him. Emily, he said, his voice lower, we can discuss this privately. I looked at him for a moment. You didn't erase me privately. The room went still again. This time, no one laughed. Mike leaned forward, frowning at the screen. What account? My mother closed her eyes. That told him enough. Angela turned to my father. Richard, you said that money came from your retirement fund. He did not answer. For years, my father had let them believe he was still the provider, still the man keeping everyone steady. It had cost him nothing to take the credit as long as I kept making the transfers. I slid my phone closer to the center of the table, not far enough for anyone to touch it, just far enough for the names house and paper to be visible. Rent support, medical premiums, property tax, school balance, car insurance, emergency transfer. Mike's face changed with every line. You've been tracking us? He snapped. I've been paying you, I said. Tracking was the responsible part. Angela let out a sharp laugh. This is ridiculous. Helping family doesn't make you a victim. No, I said. Being insulted while helping them does. My Aunt Paula shifted uncomfortably. Emily, this is still your birthday dinner. That's why I remember who paid for it. A few eyes dropped to the plates. The waiter near the door looked like he wanted to disappear into the wall. My father noticed him and stiffened. Humiliated now not by what he had said to me, but by the possibility that someone outside the family understood the truth. Enough, he said. Put the phone away. I did not move. Mike rubbed his jaw. So what exactly are you threatening to do? I'm not threatening anything, I said. At midnight, all recurring transfers stop. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Mike stood so fast his chair scraped backward. You can't do that. I have rent due. I know. My kid's school payment is linked to that account. I know that too. Angela's face hardened. So you're punishing children because your feelings got hurt? I looked at her carefully. No. I'm making their father responsible for them. That landed. Mike looked at my father, and for the first time that night, the golden child seemed to understand that praise came with weight if someone stopped carrying it for him. My father leaned over the table. This family does not turn on each other. I almost smiled. This family turned on me years ago. I just kept paying the bills. No one spoke. The candle on my cake had burned low, the wax sinking into the chocolate. I picked up the cake knife and cut the first slice myself. The ordinary sound of metal against porcelain felt louder than an argument. Then I pushed the rest of the cake toward the center of the table. You can all decide now, I said. Whether you came here for my birthday or for the account. No one reached for the cake. That was the first honest answer my family gave me that night. My mother looked at the slice in front of me, then at the account dashboard still glowing on my phone. Her lips moved once, but no sound came out. Mike stayed standing behind his chair, one hand gripping the backrest, his face caught between anger and calculation. Angela's eyes moved quickly across the table, measuring who might support her if she spoke first. Of course she did. This is financial abuse, she said, loud enough for the relatives at the far end to hear. You're using money to control everyone. I set my fork down. No, I said. Control is when you spend 7 years letting someone fund your life while telling everyone she is cold, selfish, and barely part of the family. Angela's mouth tightened. You love acting noble, don't you? I unlocked my phone again and opened the folder I had prepared that morning before leaving my office. The file name was simple: Family Account Summary. Inside were monthly statements, transfer logs, screenshots of requests, copies of bills, and a spreadsheet that showed exactly where every dollar had gone. I had not planned to show it at dinner. I had prepared it because I knew one day they would force me to defend myself against the version of me they had invented. My father saw the folder title and went pale. Emily, he said sharply. Do not. Mike turned toward him. Do not what? I opened the first page and placed the phone flat on the table. The screen showed 12 months of transfers. Not all 7 years. Just 12 months. Enough to make the truth visible without drowning the room in numbers. Mike's rent support appeared 6 times. Angela's car insurance appeared 4 times. My parents' medical premiums appeared every month. The property tax payment was highlighted in yellow. So was the school balance Mike had told everyone he had covered through some freelance consulting. Angela leaned in, then jerked back as if the screen had burned her. You saved all this? She asked. I paid all this. My father's voice dropped. You're humiliating your brother. I looked up slowly. You toasted him as the man keeping this family standing. Mike's jaw worked, but no defense came out. That was the problem with documents. They did not care who had always been loved more. My Aunt Paula cleared her throat. Maybe this is just a misunderstanding. Hannah, who had been silent since the toast, finally spoke from across the table. It's not, she said. Every head turned toward her. She looked nervous, but she did not look away. Aunt Linda asked Emily for money last Christmas to cover the house insurance. I was there. Uncle Richard told everyone later he handled it himself. My mother whispered, Hannah, please. But once one person broke the silence, the room changed. My cousin Mark looked at Mike and said, You told me you were doing really well this year. Mike snapped, Stay out of it. You borrowed $2,000 from me in May. Angela's head whipped toward Mike. You what? The private room began to crack open, not loudly, but line by line. A borrowed amount here, a late payment there, a favor dressed up as success. My father had built Mike's image with money and silence, and both were disappearing at the same table. Then my phone buzzed. A notification appeared across the top of the screen. Scheduled transfer update confirmed. My father saw it before I cleared it. What did you already do? He asked. I picked up the phone and closed the folder. I changed the authorizations. His face hardened. Without speaking to me? The account is in my name. Mike stared at me. Wait, what does that mean? It means Dad was never the account holder, I said. He was an authorized user. So were Mom. And, for 2 years, you. Mike's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. You removed me? Yes. Angela stood halfway from her chair. You can't just cut off access. I already did. For the first time, my father lost control of his voice. After everything this family gave you. The words came out so loud that the waiter opened the door a few inches, then froze. I turned toward my father, and the entire room seemed to lean with me. What did you give me? I asked. He opened his mouth, but I did not let him fill it with history rewritten in his favor. You gave Mike a car at 16. You gave me a bus pass and called it independence. You paid his tuition. I worked nights and graduated with loans. You helped him with the down payment on his first condo. When I asked to stay home for 3 months after losing my job at 24, you told me struggle builds character. My mother's eyes filled again. We were trying to make you strong. No, I said. You were trying to make me cheap. That was the first sentence that truly hurt them. I saw it land across the table, heavier than the numbers, heavier than the transfers. Because money could be explained away. Favoritism could not. Mike shoved his chair back. I'm not sitting here listening to this. He walked toward the door, but before he reached it, my phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from the bank. I read the subject line, then looked at my father. Family account. Attempted transfer declined. The room went so quiet I could hear the birthday candle smoke fading from the wick. My father did not blink. Mike slowly turned back. Angela's voice came out thin. Who tried to transfer money? I looked at the timestamp. Dad did, I said. My mother covered her mouth. My father's face turned a deep, furious red. It was a test, he said. No, I replied. It was proof. The word proof changed the room more than the word money had. My father stood very still. One hand pressed against the table, the other curled beside his plate. He had always been good at anger when anger could make people step back. But this was different. Anger needed a stage. Proof needed only a screen. Mike looked from him to me. Dad? My father did not answer fast enough. That silence did what my voice never could. Angela sank back into her chair, the color draining from her face as if she was beginning to understand that the account was not just help. It was the invisible floor under her entire lifestyle. What transfer? Mike asked. I kept my phone in my hand. $8,000. My mother made a small sound. Mike's head snapped toward her. For what? Again, no answer. I opened the bank alert and turned the screen just enough for him to see the declined attempt. My father had tried to move the money into an outside checking account 2 minutes after I announced the transfers would stop. The destination nickname was not subtle. Mike Reserve. Angela stared at the words. Mike Reserve? She whispered. My father's face hardened. It was temporary. I looked at him. Everything is temporary when I'm the one paying. He slammed his palm onto the table. You have no right to speak to me like this. The old version of me would have flinched. The old version would have lowered her voice, softened the truth, protected my mother from embarrassment, and my father from consequence. But that woman had been built to survive inside a family that confused obedience with love. I was no longer interested in surviving them. I have every right, I said. The account is mine. The money is mine. The records are mine. And tonight, in front of everyone, you tried to drain it after telling this room Mike was the one keeping the family standing. Mike's face twisted. You were going to move 8,000 to me? My father pointed at me, but his words were aimed at Mike. She is trying to divide us. No, I said. I'm showing him the bill that came with being your favorite. That hit Mike harder than I expected. For the first time that night, he looked less like the golden sun and more like a man who had been handed a crown made of debt. Angela turned on him. Did you know about this? No, Mike said quickly. Too quickly. I looked at him. He looked away. There it was. Not full knowledge maybe, but enough. Enough to know that when his life kept working after every failure, someone else was absorbing the damage. Enough to avoid asking questions because questions might make him responsible. My mother reached for my father's sleeve. Richard! Stop! Please! But my father had moved past caution. Humiliation was making him reckless. You think you're powerful because you control a bank account? He said. You're still the same bitter girl who never learned how to be part of this family. Aunt Paula whispered. Richard. He ignored her. You were always difficult, he continued. Always counting. Always keeping score. Always acting like love was a ledger. The sentence should have hurt more. Maybe it would have years ago. But by then, the ledger was open in front of everyone. And it was not love that had numbers beside it. It became a ledger, I said. When you made my worth depend on what I could cover. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was not the bank. It was an email from Martin Cole, the attorney I had spoken to 2 weeks earlier. Document package ready for review. I had asked him to prepare it quietly after my father demanded I increase the monthly transfer because Mike was under pressure. That same week, Angela had posted vacation photos from a beachfront hotel. I did not confront them then. I simply called Martin. I opened the attachment. My father saw the law firm letterhead and stopped talking. That was the first wise thing he had done all evening. "What is that?" Mike asked. I did not hand him the phone. "A notice of account restructuring and repayment documentation." Angela gave a nervous laugh. "Repayment?" "Yes," I said. "Not for everything. I'm not interested in chasing 7 years of every grocery run and electric bill. But the loans labeled temporary, the ones signed by Dad, Mike, or Angela, are now being formalized. Martin will send copies tomorrow." Mike's mouth fell open. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious." My mother stared at me as if I had become someone she did not know. "Emily, that will destroy your brother." "No," I said. "It will introduce him to his own life." The room went cold. Angela stood fully now, gripping her small designer purse. "This is why nobody can love you. You make everything a transaction." I looked at her purse. I remembered the transfer she had requested the week after buying it. The one she said was for a late insurance premium. I could have said that in front of everyone. I could have opened the screenshot and watched her collapse into excuses. But I did not. Not yet. Instead, I looked at Mike. "Take your wife home," I said. "You both have a long night of checking which parts of your life were actually yours." Mike's face tightened with shame. But shame quickly became anger because anger was easier to wear in public. "You're enjoying this," he said. I shook my head. "No. That's the part none of you understand. I didn't want to win. I wanted to be loved without having to sponsor it." For the first time, my mother began to cry quietly. Not because she had defended me too late. Because the account was closing on time. Angela was the first to leave the table. But she did not leave the room. She walked to the far corner near the sideboard, pulled out her phone, and began typing with sharp, angry movements. Mike followed her with his eyes but did not move. My father saw it too, and something desperate crossed his face. He had lost control of the account, lost control of the room, and now the story itself was slipping away from him. That was always the next step in my family. When facts turned against them, they reached for reputation. My phone buzzed a minute later. Hannah looked down at hers first, then glanced at me. "Emily," she said quietly. I already knew. Angela had posted a photo of my birthday table. The cake was visible, along with my father standing stiffly near the head of the room and me seated in front of my phone. The caption read, "Some people use money to abuse their own family. Pray for us tonight. We are heartbroken." There it was. Not even 10 minutes after being shown the records. Angela had begun building the version of the night where I was the villain. No mention of my father's toast. No mention of Mike's rent. No mention of the attempted transfer. Just a soft-lit photo, a wounded caption, and a family trained to let me look cruel if it protected everyone else. Mike saw the post over Angela's shoulder. "Angie," he muttered. "Take that down." She turned on him. "Why?" "She wants to humiliate us in public. Let people know what she's doing." I stood slowly. My father's eyes sharpened. "Emily, don't make this worse." I looked at him. "She already did." Angela lifted her chin, suddenly brave again because she had an audience she could not see. "What are you going to do? Sue me for saying my feelings?" "No," I said. "I'm going to let the record speak." I opened my email and forwarded the prepared summary to the 3 people who mattered first. My mother, my father, and Mike. Then I added Angela, because if she wanted to turn this into a public morality play, she deserved the script. The message was brief. Effective midnight, all personal recurring transfers from the family account are discontinued. Documented medical expenses for Linda Parker will continue to be paid directly to providers. Attached are 12 months of account activity, signed temporary loan acknowledgments, and tonight's declined transfer attempt. I paused before sending. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to remember the last second before the old version of the family ended. Then I tapped send. 4 phones lit up almost at once. Angela looked down. Her expression shifted from anger to confusion, then to alarm. Mike opened the attachment first. I watched his thumb freeze halfway down the screen. "What signed acknowledgements?" he asked. My father closed his eyes. That was how I knew Mike had never read what he signed. He had treated every paper I put in front of him like every bill I paid. Something boring that existed below his attention. I looked at him. "The documents you signed when you called the transfers temporary." Angela stared at him. "Mike?" He swallowed. "I thought it was just for Emily's records." "It was," I said. "That's what records are." My mother's hands trembled around her phone. "Emily, please. You don't need to involve lawyers." I involved lawyers when Dad asked me last month to increase the family support by 30% and told me Mike's business was finally turning around. Mike's head dropped. Angela's eyes narrowed. "What business?" No one answered. So I did. "The one he said needed equipment deposits. The one that doesn't exist." The words landed harder than the account summary. Angela turned toward Mike slowly, as if the man beside her had become unfamiliar. "You told me the consulting money was delayed." Mike rubbed his face. "I was going to start something. With my transfers," I said. My father slammed his hand against the table again. But this time the sound had no authority left in it. "Enough. You are tearing this family apart." I looked at him, and for the first time that night, I felt nothing but clarity. "No, Dad. I am removing the tape. The cracks were already there." Angela's phone buzzed again. Comments were starting to appear under her post. Some people offered sympathy. A few asked what had happened. Then Hannah, still seated across from me, picked up her phone. She typed for several seconds. A moment later, Angela's face went pale. Hannah had commented publicly, "I was at the dinner. Emily paid for it." Her father called Mike his only real child before this happened. There is more to this story. Angela looked at Hannah with pure hatred. "You had no right." Hannah's voice shook, but she did not back down. "Neither did you." That was the first time someone in my family defended me before the damage was safe to discuss later. It was small, but it changed the temperature in the room. Mike sat down heavily. "Emily," he said, and his voice sounded different now. "Not sorry. Not yet. But frightened. What happens tomorrow?" I picked up my handbag. "Tomorrow, Martin sends the formal notices. Tomorrow, you find out what your rent actually costs. Tomorrow, Dad explains to Mom which bills were real and which ones were Mike's." My mother began to cry harder. I looked at her, and the old ache moved through me. But I did not let it become surrender. "Your prescriptions will still be paid," I said gently. "Directly. No gaps. No games." She nodded, unable to speak. My father stared at me like I had betrayed him by refusing to betray myself. "You'll regret this," he said. I took my phone, locked the screen, and placed it in my bag. "No," I said. "I'll finally be able to count what peace costs when I'm not buying yours." I left the private room before anyone could decide whether stopping me would make them look worse than letting me go. The hallway outside the restaurant was quiet, lined with dark wood and framed photographs of people smiling over meals that probably ended better than mine. Behind the closed door, I heard Angela's voice rise. Then Mike's. Then my father's low command trying to press everyone back into order. For most of my life, that sound would have pulled me back. I would have returned to soften the damage, explain my tone, rescue my mother from discomfort, and make myself smaller so everyone else could breathe. This time, I kept walking. Hannah caught up with me near the coat check. "Emily." I stopped. She looked nervous, twisting her phone in both hands. "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner." I wanted to tell her it was fine, because that was the cleanest answer. Instead, I told the truth. I needed someone to say it while it still cost something. Her eyes filled. "I know." That was enough. I did not need a speech from her. I did not need a dramatic apology in the lobby. One honest sentence had already done more for me than years of family silence. When I stepped outside, the evening air felt cold against my face. My driver was waiting by the curb, but before I could reach the car, my phone began vibrating again and again. Mike, Mom, Dad, Angela, then Mike again. I did not answer. The first voicemail arrived before I was halfway home. "It's me," Mike said, his voice tight. "Look, Angela's freaking out, Dad's losing it, and Mom won't stop crying. You made your point. Just pause the account for a few days, okay? Don't actually shut everything off tonight." I deleted it. The second voicemail came from my father. "You are behaving recklessly. I don't know what kind of attorney is filling your head with this nonsense, but you are not the head of this family. You are my daughter. Call me immediately." I deleted that one too. My mother's message was harder. "Emily, honey, please. I know your father said something hurtful. I know. But Mike has children. We can talk tomorrow. Just don't do anything tonight that can't be undone." I sat in the back seat with the city lights sliding across the window and listened to her breathing after the words ended. She had still not said I was wronged. She had only said my father's words were hurtful, as if cruelty were weather and not a choice. I saved her message, not because it comforted me, but because it reminded me why the account had to close. At 11:47 p.m., I arrived at my apartment. It was quiet, clean, and mine in a way my parents' house had never been. I changed out of the dress my mother had chosen for the birthday photos and opened my laptop at the kitchen island. Martin had already sent the final checklist. I reviewed every line. Recurring transfers. Cancelled. Authorized users. Removed. Emergency credit feature. Disabled. Medical direct pay channel. Active. Formal repayment notices. Scheduled for 8 a.m. Then I saw one more alert. Angela had deleted her post. Not because she regretted it, because Hannah's comment had turned the sympathy against her. Screenshots were already moving through the family group chat. My Aunt Paula, who had called my father's insult a poor joke, had texted my mother, "Richard should not have said that in front of everyone." It was not justice yet, but it was the beginning of social collapse. At 11:59 p.m., my father called again. He let it ring. At midnight, the bank dashboard refreshed. Every scheduled payment switched from active to cancelled. For 7 years, I had believed the family account was proof that I was loyal. Watching those lines go gray, I understood something cleaner and colder. Loyalty without dignity is just unpaid labor with a prettier name. I closed the laptop. For the first time in years, no one in my family had access to my money while calling it love. By 8:03 the next morning, Mike called me 12 times. By 8:17, Angela called from a number I did not recognize. By 8:41, my father sent one text. "You have gone too far." I read it while standing at my kitchen counter with coffee in my hand, and Martin's document package open on my laptop. The message did not surprise me. My father had never believed boundaries were real unless he was the one placing them around someone else. At 9 sharp, Martin sent the formal notices. At 9:06, Mike finally understood that the night before had not been a performance. His next voicemail was no longer angry. "Emily, please call me." The rent payment bounced. The school portal says the balance is unpaid. Angela's insurance renewal didn't go through. Dad says this is temporary, but the bank says I'm not authorized anymore. Just call me. Please. I listened once, then forwarded it to Martin. Not because I wanted revenge, because I was done being the emergency contact for consequences I did not create. The public collapse came faster than I expected. By noon, the family group chat had split into two kinds of people. Those asking what had really happened, and those begging everyone to stop talking. Angela tried to repair her image first. She posted another message, softer this time, about misunderstandings, private family pain, and financial manipulation. But Hannah had already shared the truth with 3 relatives who had been at dinner, and one of them sent around the screenshot of Angela's deleted post beside the account summary line showing her car insurance. The story changed shape without me touching it. By 2, Aunt Paula texted me privately. "I didn't know you were paying that much. Your father should apologize." I stared at the message for a long time. then put the phone down without answering. It was strange how quickly people discovered morality once the winning side became obvious. At 4:30, Martin called. They received the notices, he said. Your father's attorney contacted me. My father has an attorney now? He called an old golf friend who does estate planning. The man sounded confused. That almost made me smile. Martin continued. They are claiming emotional coercion and family misunderstanding. I reminded them your records include signed temporary loan acknowledgments, bank transfer labels, text requests, and last night's attempted transfer after access was revoked. And they asked if you would consider mediation. I looked out over the city, watching the afternoon sun strike the glass of the buildings across from mine. For years, I had mediated every crisis before anyone else even saw the damage. I had been the bridge, the cushion, the quiet payment, the useful daughter. Now they wanted a formal room and a neutral table, because I had finally stopped making surrender look polite. Yes, I said. But not at their house. Not at Dad's club. Not anywhere he can perform. 2 days later, we met in Martin's conference room. My father arrived first in his navy suit, the one he wore whenever he wanted to look reasonable. My mother came beside him, pale and quiet. Mike and Angela entered last. Mike looked like he had not slept. Angela looked as if she had spent 2 days crying carefully enough not to ruin her makeup. A large screen stood at the end of the room. Martin greeted everyone, then placed a printed packet in front of each chair. My father looked at mine, then at me. Emily, this is unnecessary. I sat across from him. So was the toast. That ended the small talk. Martin began with the account structure. He did not raise his voice. He did not insult anyone. He simply showed the records. 7 years of deposits from me, authorized withdrawals by my father, transfers to Mike, emergency loans signed and labeled temporary, and the declined $8,000 attempt marked Mike Reserve. On the screen, the truth looked almost boring. That made it worse for them. There was no dramatic music, no emotional interpretation, just dates, amounts, names, signatures. Angela stared at her own signed acknowledgement for the insurance loan and whispered, I didn't know this was real. Martin looked at her. It has your signature. Mike kept his eyes on the table. My father tried one last time. This family has always helped each other, he said. Martin clicked to the final slide. A photo appeared from my birthday dinner. Hannah had taken it without meaning to capture anything important. My cake sat untouched. My father stood with his glass raised. Mike smiled beside him. I sat in front of the candle, looking up at the man who had just erased me. The room went silent. Martin did not need to explain the image. My mother began to cry. Not loudly. Not theatrically. Just one hand over her mouth as the meaning finally reached her without anywhere soft to land. Mike looked at the screen, then at me. You paid for the dinner too, he said. I nodded. His face broke first. Not into apology, not fully, but into recognition. He saw the shape of it then. The birthday, the toast, the account, the bills, the woman sitting across from him who had been treated like an extra while financing the stage. My father looked smaller than I had ever seen him. What do you want? He asked. There it was again. The belief that every wound had a price. I slid the settlement terms across the table. I want Mom's medical bills paid directly through the provider channel. I want all other personal support ended permanently. I want repayment plans for documented temporary loans. I want written confirmation that no one will represent my money as Dad's support again. And I want Angela to post a correction. Angela's head snapped up. Publicly? You accused me publicly. She looked at Mike for help. He did not move. My father read the terms, his mouth tightening with every line. And if we refuse? Martin answered before I could. Then we proceed with collections on the signed loans and preserve all records related to misrepresentation and the attempted transfer. No one spoke. For the first time in my life, the room did not bend around my father's pride. It bent around paper. Angela posted the correction that evening. It was not elegant. It was not sincere. It was written in the stiff language of someone who had been advised by an attorney and frightened by screenshots. She said her earlier post had been incomplete. that I had provided financial support to the family for years, and that the conflict at my birthday dinner began after my father made a hurtful statement in front of guests. She did not apologize well, but she apologized publicly. That was enough. By the end of the week, Mike had moved his son's school payments into his own name. Angela's car insurance became Angela's problem. My father's club membership lapsed quietly, without an announcement. Without a speech about connections or reputation, the house bills were separated. My mother's prescriptions continued through the direct pay channel, and for the first time in 7 years, I received a pharmacy confirmation that did not pass through my father's hands. The family group chat went nearly silent. That silence felt different from the old silence. The old silence had protected them. This one protected me. My father did not call for 9 days. When he finally did, I let the call go to voicemail. He did not leave one. Mike sent a message 2 days later. I didn't know how much you were covering. I should have asked. I'm sorry about the toast. I'm sorry I let Dad say it. I read it twice. Then I put the phone down. There had been a time when those words would have pulled me back instantly. I would have mistaken the first small crack in his pride for a doorway and rushed through it carrying forgiveness in both hands. But I was learning that an apology is not the same as repair. Repair requires time, evidence, and a willingness to live without the benefits of the person you hurt. So I answered only one sentence. I hope you become the man Dad toasted. He did not reply. My mother asked to meet me the following Sunday at a small cafe near the hospital. She looked older when she walked in, not because of her face, but because she was carrying her own handbag for once instead of letting my father hold everything important. She sat across from me and placed a folded paper on the table. It was a list of her prescriptions, appointments, and direct billing contacts. No emotional ambush. No request for Mike. No message from my father, hidden inside her voice. I should have looked at you, she said. I knew exactly what she meant. At the birthday dinner, at the toast, at all the tables before that. Yes, I said. Her eyes filled, but she did not reach for my hand. I was grateful for that. I don't know how to fix what I let happen, she whispered. Then don't start with fixing, I said. Start with not asking me to carry it. She nodded slowly. That was the closest thing to peace we had ever managed. A month later, I spent my 34th birthday again. Privately this time. Hannah came over with a small cake from a bakery that did not know my family name. We ate it in my kitchen with paper plates, bare feet, and no speeches. She lit one candle and said, "Make a wish." I looked at the flame and realized I did not want my father to take back the words anymore. In a strange, painful way, they had done what years of smaller insults had failed to do. They had made the truth too public to excuse. I blew out the candle. The next morning, I closed the old family account completely and opened a new one under a different name. Not Parker Family Support. Not Emergency Fund. Not anything that made neglect sound noble. I named it Peace. The first transfer I made was not to Mike. Not to my father. Not to another late bill wearing the costume of family loyalty. It was to myself. For therapy. For rest. For the quiet life I had postponed while funding people who called my absence selfish and my help invisible. Sometimes people think the final moment of a story like this is the collapse. The angry father. The exposed brother. The public correction. The signed repayment plan. But that was not the final moment for me. The final moment came on an ordinary Thursday morning when my phone stayed silent, my coffee stayed hot, and no one needed me to rescue a life they would later claim they built alone. I sat by the window, opened my bank dashboard, and saw no pending family transfers. For the first time, the numbers did not show what I was losing. They showed what I had finally stopped giving away.